Heartbeat Alaska is brought to you in part by Coca-Cola.
By Cook Inlet Region Incorporated, an Alaska Native corporation promoting economic and social progress for people throughout the state. By the generous support of the Alaska Native Health Board.
We are one people under one sky, with separate languages and ways. We are the heartbeat of Alaska. We open our hearts to you and welcome you to Heartbeat, Alaska.
Welcome to Heartbeat Alaska. I'm Janie Green, bringing you Native news across the north. Hello to our viewers in Arizona, to our viewers in Canada, to our viewers in the Russian Far East, and of course Greenland. Thank you so much for joining us, and most especially to our viewers in Alaska. Please continue to send me video from your village or community. And that goes for Canadians also. I've been getting some phone calls from when it's aired, I believe on Wednesday night and Tuesday night across Canada. So please, get me some video. I'm sure our Alaskan viewers and our viewers in Arizona would love to visit with you as well. On today's program, we have Ann Walker from the Alaska Native Health Board interview. John Active from KYUK-TV in Bethel is with us once again. And later on in the program, I would like to introduce you to a fabulous rock group. They're natives. They're from Canada, and they're called Kashtin. I'm sure you'll enjoy that one. All that plus much more news. But first, here's Gary Fife with Native news across the nation.
This is Native News Across the Nation. I'm Gary Fife. In the National Energy Policy Act of 1992, several provisions were included to deal with Native American tribal issues. Among those were a greater emphasis on the government-to-government relationship and the establishment of a 20-member Tribal Indian Energy Commission to provide input to the government. But there's been little action to get that Tribal Commission established. Kim Snyder, Washington Liaison Officer for the Division of Energy and Minerals for the Bureau of Indian Affairs, says there has been little progress and the BIA has not done anything more than collect names for nominations. Snyder says his agency has been receiving more requests for commission membership applications and more inquiries about what the Indian Energy Commission should actually be accomplishing. He says they're also asking when that job will be done, and his office doesn't have any answers yet. When established, the Indian Energy Commission is supposed to be working with the Departments of Interior and Energy and the National Congress of American Indians. Tribes and government officials concerned about the future of Native American mineral resources will be discussing issues and exchanging ideas in an upcoming session. The Bureau of Indian Affairs will be hosting its 4th annual Indian Minerals Conference, February 1st through the 3rd in Golden, Colorado. A new survey shows that a proposed Air Force training range near the Idaho-Nevada border contains hundreds of historic Native American sites, some possibly as old as 10,000 years. Tribal leaders of the Duck Valley Shoshone-Paiute tribes hope to use this new evidence to bring a halt to the state of Idaho's efforts to convert the land into a bombing range for Air Force pilots. A former Bureau of Indian Affairs employee who wrote Treasury Department checks to 5 relatives has been sentenced to 2 years in prison. Jeanette Sangre of the Rocky Boy Reservation in Montana worked as an assistant disbursement officer there and had access to blank checks meant to pay Native firefighters. Sangre was accused of writing checks to her daughter, 3 sisters, and an aunt who were not firefighters. They each received a 6-month prison term. And finally, at least one symbol that some Native Americans find offensive will not be displayed in public anymore. A 2-story tall metal sign in the likeness of the Cleveland Indians baseball team's Chief Wahoo has been retired. The billboard on top of Cleveland Stadium is shaped like a Native man in baseball uniform with a big buck-tooth grin. But it won't be part of the new stadium the team will move into. Cleveland Indian officials say the rusting sign will be retired to storage or a baseball museum. This is Native News Across the Nation, and for Heartbeat Alaska, I'm Gary Fife.
Thank you, Gary. We'll see you next week. We'll be back with more news from Heartbeat Alaska right after these messages.
From Yakutat to Barrow, Alaska newspapers publish news that makes a difference in your community. Information about events and activities that is timely, accurate, and dependable. Stories about people who make the news in your community. Stories about world events that affect your community. And stories that reflect the diversity of all Alaskans. If it makes a difference in your community, you can read about it in an Alaska newspaper. Subscribe now.
Let's turn now to southwestern Alaska with Mr. John Active and his report from Bethel.
Thank you, Jeannie. Jamai, Alaska, Akum Maugwa. Here's the latest news from the Yukon and Kuskokwim deltas. The Kuskokwim 300 sled dog race is becoming a race of champions. 6 former Iditarod champions have now signed up for the race later this month. Jeff King, Susan Butcher, Rick Swenson, Martin Boozer, Rick Mackey, and Jerry Riley have signed up for the round-trip trek from Bethel to Aniak and back. King, Swenson, Butcher, and Mackey have also won the K300. King has won the last 3. Swenson and Mackey have won the race twice. The winner this year gets $17,500. Statewide hearings on the Alaska 2000 project came to Bethel recently. As part of this outreach program, the state is asking parents to help set education standards for Alaska students. The state wants to put down on paper the skills Alaska students should have when they graduate. The state will be setting standards in 4 areas: math, science, English, and language arts. Education Commissioner Jerry Covey says this should help schools with native language programs.
It's not an either-or situation when it comes to languages. And if different parts of the state choose to have instruction in a different language, that's fine with us. In fact, we're real supportive of that. It's happening here, I know, and it's happening in other districts. Anchorage has a number of language immersion programs. They're teaching in Japanese immersion, Spanish immersion schools, and we're finding that in other places as well.
Commissioner Covey says Alaska Native students will benefit by these standards because it will hold the state, school districts, and school boards more accountable for their actions. It's a long way from the August primary, but the race for Senator George Jacko's seat is already crowded. Former State Senator George Homan says he may run. Earlier, Homan had said he would run for the House. Bethel Representative Lyman Hoffman says he is eyeing Jacko's job. Hoffman says Jacko's censure by the Senate has made him ineffective. King Salmon nurse Mary Ann Wilson has also announced her candidacy. She went before the Bethel City Council on Tuesday to introduce herself. Wilson says Jacko's ethics charges are part of the reason she decided to run. Wilson says tourism and fishing will be among the issues she'll focus on. The number of bush residents living below the poverty level improved in the last decade. It dropped by more than 4%, thanks in part to mining and oil activity, and in some areas to booms in the salmon industry. A study by the State Department of Labor also shows that the decline in overall poverty rates occurred throughout most of the bush, with the greatest improvement in the Kotzebue area. The region got a boost with the opening of the Red Dog mine in the 1980s. The poverty rate in the Northwest Arctic Borough is about 19% compared to about 30% in the Yukon-Kuskokwim deltas, which still has one of the highest poverty rates in the bush. Overall, the gap between rural Alaska and urban Alaska is still very wide. The poverty rate for rural Alaska is at 21%. For the rest of the state, it's at 7%. The YK Delta is also lagging behind in average household income, which ranges between $20,000 and $25,000, the lowest in bush Alaska. In the Nome area, it's over $30,000, and in the North Slope and Bristol Bay boroughs, it's over $50,000. The study also revealed some other discouraging trends. Bush unemployment rates remain high, barely budging from a decade ago. In some villages, unemployment is high as 50%. Yukon River fishermen are preparing for the March Board of Fisheries meeting in Anchorage, with 2 meetings of their own. In March, the Fish Board will again look at the Western Alaska chum salmon crisis and consider putting more restriction on peninsula fishermen. And that will be the main focus of the meetings in St. Mary's on January 17th and in Mountain Village on January the 18th. The Yukon River Drainage Fisheries Association also wants to hear from fishermen about proposed salmon restoration and enhancement projects. Also on the agenda, commercial freshwater fisheries for whitefish and sheefish. Uyana Nichuniluchi, thank you for listening. Reporting from public radio and television station KYUK in Bethel, Alaska, I'm John Active.
Thank you, John Active. It's a pleasure to have you with us. We'll be back with more news from Heartbeat, Alaska right after these messages.
If you have news or information from your village or community, please call Heartbeat Alaska, area code 907-563-3507, or fax 907-563-7079.
Welcome back. Ann Walker, Executive Director of the Alaska Native Health Board Interview, spoke this week with Ray Bokesh.
We've got Ray Bokesh here from Togiak, who's a substance abuse counselor working for Bristol Bay Area Health Corporation. Ray, what makes Togiak's substance abuse program so unique and different?
This is a village-based outpatient program where I deal with the VPSOs, which is the Village Police Safety Officers. I also deal with the City Council, the Traditional Council, the health aides. We have a mental health person that I deal with. The school system, where we do presentations during potlatches or potlucks, dealing with alcohol and drug abuse. Also, we have a youth group, which there can be anywhere from, on a Saturday night, 15 to 40 kids.
What kind of things do you do at your youth group?
Well, we do little presentations on alcohol and drug abuse. Sometimes we get into, like AIDS, prevention, just talk group-wise and discuss what can be done to help the children deal with staying away from alcohol and drugs.
How do you attract so many of the youth? That's a lot of youth to get to attend a lecture.
Yes, it is, and it's, we usually we'll have a video, that's one of the movies from, that's popular nowadays. We'll have refreshments, soda pop, juice, fried bread, cookies, whatever, those kinds of things.
Music?
Sometimes, yeah. Sometimes we'll just have music and just sit around and talk, and I have had children come up to me and say, well, I might have a problem, and say, can I talk with you?
What kind of prevention activities do you do? I know that's one of the most things that we have to focus on with substance abuse.
One of the things that we did because of the lack of things to do was we had a spirit camp this last summer, which Bristol Bay Native Association was involved in, and they did the funding, and we went upriver and we did fishing and family activities. So it was healing as a family. Where the elder, parents or grandparents were teaching the young things to do, and how to do it, how to fish, how to pick berries, how to put them up, properly, how to smoke them or do whatever, they wanted to do with them.
How do you, who are your clients? How do they come to you?
Some of them come through our office, referred by the court system. Some of them come to us referred by DFYS. Others may come through us referred from the school or their bosses in the village. Some come through the health aides clinic. We have Kanakanak Hospital in Dillingham where they will pick up a person on what they call Title 47, which is basically drunk in public. And they're from Togiak or Good News, where I go, and they send us a copy, and then we contact them by mail and say, offer our services.
Are there village-based counselors in all of Bristol Bay's villages?
No, I travel to 3 other villages besides the one that I'm in. I travel to Twin Hills, I travel to another one called Good News, and another small village which is called Platinum.
Do you think you've seen a success in the years that you've been working there in recovery rates for alcoholism and prevention of Native people becoming alcoholics?
The recovery rate is hard to tell at this time, but since I've gone there, my clientele was about 5 people when I first went there, and now I've probably got, just in Togiak, 30, 32 people.
That's a lot of people. Well, thanks a lot, Ray. Ray was born and raised in Juneau and is currently living in Togiak as a village-based substance abuse counselor. For Heartbeat Alaska, Alaska Native Health Board, I'm Ann Walker.
Thank you, Ann. It's my pleasure now to introduce you to a Canadian native rock group called Kashtin. They're from the Maliotenam Reserve, which is located 500 miles northeast of Montreal in Quebec. They're members of the great Algonquin Nation. They're members of that tribe. Here is Kashtin singing in their native tongue, Innu, which, by the way, is spoken by only 10,000 of their native people.
C'est du monde de niaise, hein? Un petit peu plus fort, OK?
Wasn't that group fabulous? Thank you so much for joining me here on Heartbeat Alaska. Please continue to send in your village news. give me a call. I'll do my best to get it on the air. For Heartbeat Alaska, I'm Jeannie Green. Join me again next week. See you then.